Yay.
All right, this goddamn part two with the fucking Harv because goddamn part one cut out. My cheap ass is too fucking cheap to fucking buy for a one time deal, a monthly Zoom. So for all the bubbles out there, this is part two because I know somebody's gonna leave in part one. What a fucking dumbass! This thing cuts out abruptly, like I wasn't fucking aware. So here's part two.
We just sat talking, to the blank screen.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
had no idea what was happening.
Had no idea. And then I hit upload, and you were the first to let me know, dude. You in the comments. I just didn't know. Because, dude, I'm telling you right now, if you want to laugh your balls off, wait 24 hours, go to your first video bat and read the comments. I guarantee you, without fail, somebody will say something along those lines. Why does it a red end abruptly? Like, what a dumbass. Or just, it'll be something like that. Just watch every time.
I just love that people comment first and then think later. It's like, your question would probably be answered pretty quickly. You didn't have to type that. You could have just clicked your mouse once and then they're like, oh, instead of just typing first. But hey, it's the internet.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have you seen any comments that irked you or you laughed at? Let's say on something Zoom music videos and shit like that, or stuff, anything Zoom related? Because you're on other stuff. Is there anything that you've seen? You're like, what? Like maybe they comment on something you said or a song. Is there anything that, or you just never cared, just whatever?
I mean, you can't think too much about the comments, but at the same time, my ego is a little bit too big to just like never read them. So sometimes I scroll through, especially like if we have like a new single from a new album or whatever. Every once in a while, it's always like the same things though. It's always like, oh, these guys are like so unoriginal. They've been around forever. Go get your own style by now. And it's usually like one dude out of 100 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then people will reply, and I'm just like, okay, cool. Well, I think the one that made me laugh is like when you were talking to Ross and I at no class at the apartment back on that video. I just remember one of the comments was like, so Matt and Ross are basically an old married couple.
Yeah, that got broke up and got back together.
Because there was this one point, like I remember that interview. I was like, I don't want to watch this because it's funny, but I just couldn't hear well enough, so I stopped halfway through. But there's like
this audio sucks.
There's points in the interview where like Ross will be saying something, and I have that look, and I know exactly what I'm thinking. Like, well, that's basically right, but like those details are like not quite right. And then there's another point where I'm saying something, and he has the exact same fucking look on his face, just like I'm just gonna let him go and blah blah blah.
Well, especially when you got a duo like that, and the two of you kind of know what the other one's going to say, and some stuff you don't want to say on camera. Like I've somewhat been in that scenario, and you see the other person, it's going to be funny to you because you're like, yeah, I know what he's thinking. Because I've been in that scenario. I was like, yeah, but I ain't saying it. If he wants to, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think Ross and I have now known each other. This year will be 30 years.
So you known Cole longer than?
Yeah, I met Cole in like 7th grade, which I think was 89, 88, 89.
Might have been 88, 7th grade. I think 8th grade is when you're 13. And you said you were 13 and 88.
Well, I graduated early because I'm born in October, so I graduated when I was 17. So, and that was 93. So,
what are you, October 31st?
October 19th.
Oh shit! Should have waited.
I'm not that spooky. But yeah, so I met Cole in 7th grade, and then we started hanging out a lot in 8th grade. And then he went to a different school, which is where Ross went to school. And then I think when we were juniors, Ross was a sophomore, even though Ross is a month older than me. And anyway, and then we started hanging out, and then, decades later, here we are talking about these fucking records we made 20 something years ago.
Well, that's good. I mean, dude, if you think about it, especially a lot of bands, when you take all the bands as a whole, especially some bands that were great with demos or they had one album. I mean, hell, a band like Repulsion. I mean, if you really did the math, not too many bands, like in a sense, make it. And I don't mean success, make it like your Anthrax size. I'm talking about make it like they're still touring, they're putting out albums for 20 plus years. Right. Majority don't.
Yeah, no, I feel like, I mean, it's like corny or whatever, But I feel like super fortunate, like that we're still able to do this. I mean, I feel fortunate, honestly, that Mike and Ross and I were all. Mike is over 50, and Ross and I are hovering just underneath it. And it's like the fact that our health is good enough to be able to keep doing it and tour in a van. And like if I needed to crash on somebody's floor, it's like whatever, it's no big deal. Because a lot of people, as I get older, I mean, fuck, I have friends that die,
Yeah.
that are in my generation. So it's really, not only are we lucky in terms of what the band has achieved or done, but we're lucky in, individually as people to be able to like continue doing this. And I try not to, take that for granted and try to be, try to just, again, it sounds like hippie-ish or whatever. It's like just try to bring that gratitude to what I'm doing, even when it's like, well, all right, I guess we got to load this fucking stupid speaker cabinet up this flight of stairs, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know what? Hey, at least I can load this speaker cabinet up the flight of stairs. So
No, it's funny you say that because actually, no, I definitely hit that point myself with just being in hells and shit like that. Just definitely not hating it, but taking it for granted. And like
sure,
even like in my opinion, not going to shows as often as I feel like I should. It was around probably about, let's say probably age 29 to no, even a little older than that. I'd say probably age 27 to about 34 or so. And they got to the point, yeah, you just kind of realize like, I think a lot of it too is when you start seeing a lot of guys dying, and it's like, well, dude, this is very temporary. You're
yeah,
involved in something that you actually you like. You could be doing something you hate, which let's face it, the majority of people are.
sure,
It's like if when you really break it down, it's like this actually you got a pretty goddamn good. Like, and you're kind of taking it for granted. And when you look and when I do think about it and look back at like old shows and shit like that, and a lot that I was in the mood to go do because maybe I was like, oh,
right,
I gotta work in the morning. I don't feel like going, man, shit like that. I'm glad I did. And I'm not talking about some bullshit like, hey, Billy Joe Bob's fucking garage punk band that you never heard of is playing class on Tuesday.
right,
I don't give a fuck, dude. But if it's somebody's like, dude, you're a fan of this band, who gives a fuck that it's on a Tuesday night? Just go. And I definitely embraced that in the last, I would say, 5 years now, more so. And I'm glad I have. And definitely been appreciative more because yeah, I think it just, well, I don't know, maybe definitely not midlife crisis, stuff like that, but maybe it's that. You start to realize, like, dude, what the fuck are you like skipping out? Like, if a band that you're a big fan, why are you not, like, why wouldn't you go? I mean, unless you have a legitimate reason.
right.
And
I mean,
I'm not in the mood. That's not a good enough reason. It's
yeah,
just not.
totally. I mean, it's, and I think it's just a perspective thing, because you do realize, after you stick around in this scene long enough, you see things come and you see things go. And, when I was a kid, it just seemed like in the early 90s, there was just great shows every month. Somebody fucking would be like Massacre and Grave, and then the next month it's like Immolation and Gorephobia, and then the next month it's like Morbid Angel and Entombed and Unleashed or whatever. And it just was like, I don't know, it seemed limitless. And then as time goes on, that's why I think when the mid 90s hit and then sort of like black metal took over and death metal wasn't cool anymore or whatever, it really like hit me like a ton of bricks because I'm like, this is the glory days, everything's great. And I'm playing in a band and trying to get better and better and better. And it's like, oh fuck, like this is actually like really temporary. And and then as you get older, yeah, you add to it like people start dying, or people start getting sick or whatever. And yeah, it's just I don't know. You look where you work, man. It's like yeah, you work a lot, but I mean, it's like you're surrounded by awesome records that
Yeah.
A lot of them like you love, and most of them you at least like.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly. Yeah, 100%.
pretty fucking cool, man.
Yeah. No, and especially when you start to, if I get reminded, whether it be a family member or you're talking to somebody out and about, and they're just, for the most part, lack of better words, miserable.
Sure.
And you're like, oh yeah, and I had to do some of that too. And you're like, oh fuck, I was like, yeah, I don't miss that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of shitty jobs, man. I have had a lot of shitty jobs. I've had several pretty good ones too, but yeah, I much prefer working for myself, and it's much easier to get motivated and to like just fucking. All right, I don't really want to do this, but shit, it's could be a lot worse, So
Well, and as someone in your position, the thing is I mean, when you break it down, I told Dom this recently, and you've done it on a bigger scale because you've done more touring and shit like that. Is I think you guys have lived your life to the absolute fullest of what you're supposed to before you go into the grave. Because think about it, dude. What is it where most people want to do, or when they retire, or when they have millions of dollars or whatever, they go and see the world. So like that.
Right.
I mean, granted, yeah, you're going to a fucking club and sometimes probably not the best neighborhood, but you have seen more of the world than 99.9% of the entire fucking world will ever do in their lives. If you die tomorrow, you have done more in your life than I will if I live to be 100. Yeah.
Well, that's very kind. I mean,
Well, this
uh,
is the truth. It's really the truth. I mean, so it's kind of like when you look at that perspective. Now, the downside of where you have it, there's an upside and downside. You got to live life to the fullest. Is that for me? Is the stress of like, well, what do I do for retirements, health
right.
insurance? What about What if this comes? What if I do break my leg? Now what? Now I can't get it. There's little things like that. It's almost like a little bit more fragile.
I mean, luckily I'm married, and so I have a wife that
Yeah,
fucking like figures all that out. She's like, "Hey, you got to pay me X amount per month, and now you got Blue Cross. All right, cool. Here's your insurance card." It's like,
yeah,
all
okay,
right,
okay.
cool.
Well,
Thank
so then
God.
yeah, you got that covered. That's good because well, I'm sure you know too. A lot of guys don't.
No, my retirement is in terrible shape, but I keep saying this is the year I'm gonna really get in on that, but somehow I just
Anytime though,
haven't.
dude, if you're living enough and you enjoy what you're doing, you'll just go out like Lemmy. Hopefully not on meth and fucking whiskey, but
I
you'll
mean,
do
it
it
could
till the
be
day you
worse,
die,
you know.
right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel real fortunate that we get to keep doing it, and hopefully, assuming people turn up to these gigs and are excited about it, hopefully they are because it's something people have been asking about. But it's like,
I think
I,
more people are than more people are than you think because
okay,
I've talked about the band, multiple times on the channel, just sometimes by accident because it just gets brought up in the topic. Again, as you
right,
may or may not know, you don't watch. I just go over questions, and wherever they go. And Exhum's been brought up multiple times, and I've had many people say that, oh yeah, I'm pumped they're playing tonight. Just in the comments, I could see it, or they told me. So yeah, more than you realize, I think.
nice,
And even
yeah,
at the Cavalera, I had a couple of people. They come up and meet me from the channel outside. It was the Columbus show. Yeah, because you guys dicked me. You didn't come to Cleveland, so I had to drive 2 hours to fucking Columbus. A couple kids came up to me like, "Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. It's my first time seeing Exhumed." I'm like, "What?
oh,
Really? All right. Where you been, bro?"
that's great, man.
Yeah. So
You know,
I
that's
think there are definitely people. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it kind of feels like a little. I think one of the reasons I avoided it is it feels a little like self-congratulatory, like, oh, hey, good job, us. Um,
Yeah.
but it was like with the anniversary of the record and everything else, it just made sense. I was like, okay, this is something we should do, because I always think it's more valuable to like make new music, but at a certain point, maybe that's not true. So,
I think this, in my opinion, take it for what it's worth. You probably won't. You don't take my set list. So you probably won't take it. Is if I was in your guys' shoes as far as records, I mean, I guess unless you have to because it's financial and you get paid X amount, then I guess then you got to do what you got to do to fucking survive. But if that's not the case, and if you're making mostly your money by touring and shit like that, what I would personally do is I would still write, I would still put new shit out, but I would take my time as long as possible, just as songs come, so they're the most memorable songs ever. And in the meantime, kind of do what you're doing now, like tour for the back, maybe do each if it's for whatever each album. I don't know, a 20-year anniversary something where you're kind of like, because there's a lot. Look at Repulsion, they do shows. They're I mean, granted, that's an extreme example because that's like a classic of
sure.
classics, one of the originators. But still, you're at the point where you have enough material to where you definitely could do it. And especially if you're picking different locations, like, all right, well, okay, well, we're doing the first 3 albums. Well, we just did it. It's like, no, you did it in the United States.
Right,
You could take another few months, do it over in Europe. You go over to fucking Australia, and that'll by the time you're fucking dicking around all that, that's a couple of years went by.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of end up on a 2-year cycle, even if you're really trying to write.
Yeah,
Like if you're out there working or whatever, like I don't know how Kiss like released like 2 albums in the same year, and I think Blue Oyster Cult did it too in the '70s. But I don't know. Drugs were better in the '70s, I guess. I don't know how they did it.
yeah, because sometimes if you leave them waiting and wanting more, but you're active, so they're not forgotten about,
Right,
it's almost
right.
more special. you know, but some bands, like, you don't want to be like where you disappear for 12 years and like, oh, we're
Sure.
back. These fucking geezers, you know, now the kids graduated, they're back. And you know, they want to dust off the guitars again. That's always fucking lame because 99 times out of 100, it sucks. And it's like, this isn't anything where you left off, but whatever.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but if you're still active and you're doing shit and it takes you 7 years to put out an album, in my opinion, who cares? It's the anticipation is going to be, oh, fuck it. Like, people will be kind of excited. I think so.
Well, I think that there's definitely some wisdom to that approach. You know, it's just yeah, and it's like even whatever 20 some years on, we're still just kind of figuring it out as we go, and you know, just trying to figure out what makes sense, you know, in any given situation, and have fun with it. And I think, yeah, we're definitely still having fun. So that part's successful. The rest too
So
fucking.
you definitely do still enjoy it. Like, that's not just something you're
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah. And especially it's kind of weird. It's kind of counterintuitive because I live in California. Mike's in Ohio. Sebastian's in Baltimore. Ross, you know, he's in California, but he's like 4 hours away from me. Um, so I don't know. It's like it's really like I look forward to like hanging out with the guys. You know, it's like you know your poker group or whatever. But we don't like see each other all the time to rehearse and do all these sort of like normal band things. So it kind of makes it more fun when we do get to hang out, you know.
makes sense. Cause I mean, outside, yeah, you see him more in a totality, but outside, yeah, when you're on tour, I probably see Mike more often than you do because I'll see him
Oh,
at shows. Like,
I
I just saw
guarantee.
him at a show the other day, like last month or less than that. It was at the Holder and Necrofire show.
Oh, right,
You
right.
know, I'm surprised you're here. And he was telling me about this tour coming up, and I was asking some of the questions. He's like, "Dude, I don't know." He's like, "You got to ask Matt." I was like, "What about the?" It's like, "What about the set list? You doing this?" And he's like, "I don't know, dude. He just said, here's the songs you got to learn," or something like that. He's like, "I don't remember which ones are on there." All right, fair enough.
I
So
mean, you know, like a lot of drummers, Mike isn't the best with the song titles anyway. So
I can see, yeah. How does he? He just memorizes it then in the order that you guys are doing. Then how he doesn't have to. He's playing a song. He's like, I don't know what the fuck it's called. Is that pretty
he,
much
you know, I think once we play him, you know, then he knows him for sure. But
okay?
like, if I was just to be like, oh, hey, you know, Death walks behind you, he'd be like, wait, which what? You know, especially like records he didn't play on. It's like,
Yeah,
huh? Which one?
yeah.
You know. So, and I, you know, I get it. It's more important that he can play the song as well than that he knows every single thing about every fucking record. You know.
Yeah, sure. Were you a fan of? I guess I never asked you that. I personally liked it way before I met him. Even, did you like that Vile Stench of the Deceased first album that he played on?
I did, yeah, and I like the demo, the Violation demo.
I didn't know
You
if that
know,
was just something like, yeah, I knew about them. They were a California band. They were cool. I didn't know if it was that or you like. I actually legitimately was a fan of that.
I thought, you know, it was kind of I had the sort of I liked it, but I had sort of mixed feelings about it because on one hand, it was, and I don't mean this to be as disparaging as it sounds, but it was kind of like by the numbers death metal. Like it had like clearly it was trying to get like a more soundy type production, and it was obviously influenced by like Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel, you
Yeah,
know, the sort of like starter set death metal bands or whatever.
yeah,
Which on one hand I was kind of like, but the fact that it was coming out in like 96, 97 made it a little bit more interesting because it was already kind of like a couple of years too late by the time that it came out. You know, it was something that probably would have hit a lot harder in like 93,
sure,
92.
sure,
You
sure.
know,
Well, the vibe I get with you too when it came to that stuff, you gotta remember when that Stench of the Seas came out. I was young. I was probably 14 when
sure.
I got it. Um, so yeah, I was always a big fan of it. And but the vibe I got with you and stuff like that, but even Cannibal, maybe with the exception of first record or Butcher at Birth, but for sure the first few in there later in the count, fourth, fifth album, I'm sure Morbid Angel, Deicide, any of the death metal bands, 96 up. I always got the vibe, and I can be completely wrong, with someone like you kind of like didn't care about it much at all when it came out, and so maybe in the last 10 years kind of went back to it. Like, so it's actually pretty good. That's the vibe I got, and I can be completely off
That's
base.
no, that's completely right. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I don't even think I bought like Domination.
Yeah.
You know, I just by that time I was listening mostly to like the stuff on like Morbid Records, you know, like the Hemorrhage and Regurgitate and CSSO and Dead Infection. I was listening to that stuff, and I was buying like old thrash records. You know, I thought death metal had gotten like kind of just boring, and you know, but there is stuff that I went back. You know, like records like Gallery of Suicide. I thought actually was a kick-ass record, and like Once Upon the Cross. I was like, I don't know why I heard it and thought it sucked because it's actually pretty fucking good. You know. I just remember at the time I was like, "Oh, Once Upon the Cock, this shit's
Yeah,
fucking weak."
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm sure a lot of guys have. I don't know a lot of other guys I know. Like I remember even like I think it was Baxter, Ryan Baxter, guys like that. They only liked some of them didn't even like Legion. They were like first album only, but it was first two. But I wonder how many of those guys have same thing with that because I was like, what? I was like, good. But again, I'm a kid at the time. I'm like,
Sure.
what the fuck? I was like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Like, what are these guys talking about? You know?
Yeah, I mean, your bandwidth is wide open, you know, at that age to sort of receive stuff. And
Well, keep in mind,
I do,
you would have been to me as I would have been like to you if you would have said these comments. Like, let's say I met you when I'm 14 and you were telling me this stuff, what you thought about Once Upon the Cock and Gallery of Suicide. If you were giving those comments, I would have thought the same thing that you would have thought if, let's say, you met like Dawn of the Dead in 1990, right? And
sure.
you're like, Leprosy's the greatest album. It's one of my favorite albums. It's like demos only, bro. Mantis
Right.
demos. So you'd be like, this guy's a fucking idiot.
I would just be like, huh? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like my thing is, you know, like I've been real lucky. I got to like hang out with a lot of like the older guard, you know, like,
That's so did I. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, I played in Repulsion for like 4 or 5 years. So I listened to Matt and Scott a lot and learned a lot from them. And, you know, playing with Rick and Terry and learning from them and kind of getting their take. And it's real interesting just how it all sort of works. But yeah, the commonality is basically like once you start playing this stuff, your interest in it kind of wanes within a couple of years outside of what you're doing and the stuff that made you do what you're doing. And
I could see that. I could totally see
you
that.
so you kind of your bandwidth gets sucked up, and it's hard to sort of have that same passion about a new band that comes out after you're already on like your third album, or you know, even if you've been releasing demos for a few years, you know, because you have so many ideas of your own about it that are, you know, that are separate from being a fan, you know. And plus everybody likes the music when they were in high school. Like, I mean,
Right.
my dad listens to what he listened to in high school. He
Correct.
still
So,
fucking
same here.
jams.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
he still jams, you know, Jefferson Airplane and CCR like it's like new release. It's like
Yeah, see, my dad's a little bit more after that. You know, he's, Black Sabbath, AC/DC,
Okay.
Nazareth, Van Halen, Zeppelin,
Your dad
shit like
sounds
that.
cool. I would party with your dad.
Well, did you want to hear a funny Kanye story?
Sure.
So I think it's the first time he came to this is, when we're still living at my parents' house. And the first time Kanye came to that house, and he's kind of hanging out, and I'm just like, all right, because we already started Hell's that time, and he wanted to see some merch or whatever. He heard we had something. Check it out, but he had to go upstairs. Our rooms were all upstairs. That's where all the shit was at, right? And our dad was just sitting in the living room watching TV, whatever. Says hi, and obviously you probably remember Jim, most sociable guy in the world. Will talk to
Yeah.
anybody. Talk to literally a bum on the street. I've seen him do that too, and for more than 30 seconds too.
He's
So
an
he's sitting at
extra.
the top. I'm like, Jim, let's go. Like, what the fuck, man? Come on, let's go. And then it got to the point, I just went upstairs. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. What are you talking to my dad, man? What's he talking about? You know what I mean? And then, dude, it's like 30 minutes later, he comes upstairs, and I'm like, man, what the fuck, man? What the hell are you doing? Like, what were you doing down there? Talking to your goddamn dad about goddamn music. I'm like, what do you mean talking about music? You don't like fucking anything. You're like, what are you talking about, dude? You like fucking Dio? Like Rainbow? He's like, what? These are retired medals. What do you want from the poor guy? Fucking retired medalist.
Retired metal. I mean, that's what he has to have that on a business card. Like, hi,
Retired. That's what I exactly. I thought it was fucking like it's a job.
I fucking love it, dude. That's great. Well, why don't we wrap it up there because I don't think there's going to be something better than retired medalists. And speaking of dads, I'm going to go have lunch with my dad. So,
Sounds good, dude.
yeah, dude, thank you for taking the time and talking about the tour. And
Got everything you got in there. Goddamn Hemdale Exhume split out for it.
Yeah,
The first a Slaughter Cult and Anatomy out for its tour. First three albums plus some split shit, 7 inches and Hemdale, and yeah, it starts May. What's the first date?
May 8th in Santa Cruz, California, and it ends June 16th in Seattle, Washington, and we're going all over the fucking greater 48.
Including you're
All in
playing that
between.
Sunday Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Sunday Milwaukee Metal Fest, and then a couple of Sundays later we're in your neck of the woods in Cleveland.
Yeah. So if you don't see me Sunday, then that means I was driving back that day. But Easy E should be, aka Eric, should be there at the stand.
Hell
Ain't you happen to give a fuck? But you'll probably be hanging out in your hotel with all the fucking partying up, right?
We'll see. I don't. I don't know who else is playing that day, so I'll have to. I'll see if I'm.
That's another reason I might head back. To be honest with you, there's like you guys and maybe one other band I care about. Other than that, I was looking at the list. I'm like, ooh, Sunday's looking rough. I was like, there ain't shit I care about on that day.
Sunday's always like the hangover day. It's like the worst day to play a fest. But hey, I just show up where they tell me to go.
Hey, now they heard that Sunday's even more booming. Now they see these goddamn videos.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Matt. Well, thanks for the time, and anything else? I guess I'll see you in Cleveland. Maybe we'll shoot something there.
Hell yeah. All right, bud.
Later, man.
Thanks, man.
Later.
See ya.
See ya.